Hello everyone. I have no idea what to say to start a video because I suck at this. But what I don't suck at is making models for DFS sports. And what I have here is my college basketball model for today's games that I've been working on for about 3 years to try to figure out who we can target in good spots for teams or individual players to try to make some money on tonight's NCAA tournament slate. In the team overviews tab here, and I will link this model down below so that you can open a copy of it yourself, go through all the data, all the projections, all the players, and hopefully find a way to build a winning lineup. So in the team overviews tab, this is where we're taking an overview of the slate. We're looking at all the team stats and then projections based on that. So if you scroll to the far right, you can see some projections for team efficiencies and shooting percentages and things like that. But what you're going to care most about, most likely for DFS, is going to be in the player pool tab, where we have the players for tonight's slate and then a plethora of stats, advanced stats, projections, and data that's all going to be aggregated to hopefully narrow down our selections to the best plays on the slate. And again, this will be linked so you can go through all of this to your heart's content. You can look at all the data. You can sort it however you'd like. But the way I use it is I use these columns on the far right here. And you can see they are highlighted at the top, the ones that I think are most useful for fantasy purposes. So starting with column BD, this is a rating score. 100 would be a perfect score, and this takes into account the matchup and then their advanced stats like usage rate and shooting and field goal percentage and projected efficiency and things like that. And a lot of the UNC guys are going to pop here because they have, I think they're the only team that is projected for more points tonight than they average on the season. So that's a huge advantage for them. They're projected for about 7 more points than they average. So all the UNC guys are going to get a boost in the model. And then the column BE, this is the average projection using their fantasy points per minute combined with my projection for them. So PJ Hall, for example, we have projected for 31 fantasy points tonight. And then as you adjust their minutes, that'll change their projections, obviously. Column BH gives us an idea of what fantasy score they need to hit value. So it's going to be a little over 4x of their salary. And then the fantasy point plus minus is this number, their projected fantasy points, subtract the fantasy points needed to see who's the best value plays on the slate. Column BJ is the same thing, but instead of using the average projected fantasy points, this is just from my projections, which come from column AQ here. And again, we're just taking that projection, subtracting their fantasy points needed to see who's going to hit value. And you can go through more of this, but these columns combine to make the projected fantasy points. And I try to include things like their matchup, pace up, pace down, even things like is it a good rebounding matchup or not, to get my projections for them. And then the final column that I like to use when I'm trying to figure out who I want to include in my player pool is this column BR, which is a combination of their fantasy points and their rating score compared to their salary. So what I do is I sort the top 10 plays in all 3 of those, and then I highlight their name. So you'll see over here we have a couple different colors. If you see light green, like Donovan Clingan, that means they appear in the top 10 one time. If you see this bright green, like PJ Hall, that means he appeared in the top 10 in 2 of the 3 categories. And if you see this blue color, like Baycott, that means they appeared in the top 10 in all 3. So typically I like to start by trying to include multiple of the players that are highlighted blue, and then I'll try to include some value guys like Robert Jones or Hassan Ward. But again, with college basketball, it is very volatile because of minutes and foul trouble can really mess up your lineup. So be careful, especially if guys like Hassan Ward. He gets a lot of his points from steals and blocks, and he does not play a ton of minutes. So he's one that I would be hesitant to over roster. Maybe 1 in 10 or so for him, even though he projects well. He does not play many minutes. Over his last 5 games, he's averaging about 14 minutes per game. So I would start with maybe Baycott Ingram, or Ingram and Davis, or even Baycott and Davis because they're not crazy expensive. And then maybe Robert Jones and try to fill in with the rest. You can also sort by projected fantasy points, then like to look for whose salary stands out as someone who's cheaper than the players around him. Or sort by salary and look for players whose projections stand out as being better than the players around them. But again, you can use this however you want. You can look at their shot rate, look at their usage, look at their rating scores. There's all kinds of things that you can look at here to try to find players that you think might be under-owned or undervalued, or they're in better spots than the general public might think. But for me, I start here, and I kind of build from the top down. Again, this will be linked in the description down below, so you can pull up your own copy here and look through the players tonight and hopefully find a way to get some value out of this. Hopefully it helps. Good luck.